Good evening to you all. My name is Jesse Mrawa. So today again we are going to have a short lesson, which is was Jesus begotten or created? There are many ideas that people hold, especially how Jesus became a being or how Jesus came into existence. Some teaches that Jesus was created, and also some rejected that idea and teaches that Jesus was begotten but not created. So they say the word begotten and created, these words they don't mean the same thing. So what we're going to do today is we will find out, what does the Bible say. Does the Bible say Jesus was created, or does the Bible say Jesus was what? Was begotten. So let's continue as we'll be reading together. So our first verse is coming from 1 John chapter 1 verse 1. Here it says, in the beginning was word. Sorry, in the beginning was the word, and the word was with God, and the word was God. The same was in the beginning with God. Verse 3. All things were made by him, and without him was not anything made that was made. Verse 4. In him was life, and the life was the light of men. So before we go further, verse 1, I think there are three main importance that John is giving us on verse 1. The first point is, in the beginning was the word. So there was the word in the beginning. So what we are going to do is we are going to find out which beginning is John referring to. Then the second point is the word which was in the beginning was with God. So that word which was in the beginning was with God. So in other words, what we are seeing here is the word was with someone, and that someone is God. And the last part is the word was God. And the same word was in the beginning with God. And all things were made by that word. And without the word, there's nothing made that was made. So this is the idea that we are getting here. So what we want to do here is we want to find out, was Jesus created, based on this verse, and also we will have some other verses to support the idea that I'm going to bring out. So some have, I know that some also have some wrong concept and ideas of the word beginning in verse 1. Some says it is referring to the beginning of the creation, especially of this earth. But if we define that word in its context, that's not what we are seeing here. So let's find out. So as we are seeing that from verse 1 to verse 2, the main emphasis of the verse, it is the word. The verse is focusing much on the word. So in other words, this beginning, it has something to do with the word. It is not the beginning of the creation. The beginning of creation started after the word came into existence. Are we getting the point? So the beginning of creation, according to John chapter 1, is started on verse 3. So here what we are seeing here is this beginning, it has something to do with what? With the word. It is not the beginning of creation. I'm going to explain my point. So the word beginning, or the word beginning, it means the origin of something, the origin and the source of something. That's what the word beginning means. So what if Christ was literally begotten, or if Christ was literally born of God, then he had a beginning and a source. This is what, as I have indicated, that the word beginning, it means origin and source of something. So in other words, if Christ was literally born, if Christ was literally begotten of God, then he had a beginning and source. So it's possible for God to bring something into existence without having to create him. So in other words, it was possible for God to bring forth a son without having creating him. Why am I saying so? Okay, let's first find out the meaning of the word, the meanings of the word begotten and also created. So the word created It implies bringing something into existence from nothing, while begotten refers to something or someone being brought forth from someone pre-existing of the same kind. So if Christ was begotten of God, it means that he was brought forth and is of the same kind with the Father. So in other words, what we are saying here is Christ, he has the divine nature of God. That's why it says the Word was God, because he is of the same kind with the Father, because he was begotten of God. Are we getting the point? So if Christ was begotten of God, if he came forth from God, in other words, he is of the same kind of God. So based on some studies that we had, that tells us that Christ was begotten. In other words, Christ was not created, but he was begotten. And if he was begotten, then he has the very nature of his Father. So if we destroy the sonship of Christ, in other words, we are destroying his divinity, in other words. Okay, before we go further, I'll come back again to John chapter 1. I will come back to that verse. So I want us to read Proverbs chapter 8 verse 22 this moment to verse 24. Here it says, from verse 22, it says, "The Lord possessed me in the beginning of his way, before his works of old. I was set up from everlasting, from the beginning, or ever the earth was. When there were no depths, I was brought forth, when there were no fountains abounding with water." So I'm suggesting that this verse, it was a prophet of Christ. It's talking about Christ. It's talking of Christ. Some people might say, no, it's talking of wisdom. Then it doesn't make sense if we say that there was a point when God was without wisdom and there was a point when he had wisdom. It doesn't make sense. But we know that Christ is the wisdom of God. So this chapter of chapter 8 from verse 22 going down, it's referring to Christ. So he's saying here, "The Lord possessed me in the beginning of his way, before his works of old. I was set up from everlasting, from the beginning, or ever the earth was." So this is what we are saying here. So when he said the Lord possessed me, he's saying the Lord obtained me, the Lord obtained me, the Lord got me in the beginning of his way. So there is a point whereby God's way began according to this verse, not according to our ideas or according to our questions, but according to this verse, the Lord possessed Christ in the beginning of his way, or before his works of old. So before God did anything, there is something that he did. He possessed his son, or he obtained a son. This is what we are seeing here. And if we read verse 24, it tells us that how God possessed him, how God got him. He says, "When there were no depths, I was brought forth." Are we getting the point? So in other words, Christ came out from God. He was begotten of God when in the beginning of his way, before his works of old. I was set up from everlasting, from the beginning, or ever the earth was. So here, if we see that, we are seeing that again, the word here beginning again is repeated again in Proverbs chapter 23. Again, this word beginning is not also referring to the beginning of creation, but it is referring to the beginning of the Son of God, when he was begotten of God. From that moment, it marks the beginning of God's way, which means before his works of old. Then Christ was set up from everlasting. So that period is referred to everlasting, or from beginning, or from ever the earth was. This is what we are seeing here. So before anything was ever made, Christ was there. So this phrase is from eternity, or from everlasting, or from the beginning and before the earth was. All these phrases, they mean the same thing. The verse says, "I was set up from the everlasting." Are we getting the point? And also from the beginning, or ever the earth was. So in other words, these three phrases, from everlasting, from beginning, from the beginning, or before the earth was, all these phrases, they mean the same thing. Here what we are seeing here is Solomon is using Hebrew parallelism in verse 23. He's expressing a thought one way, then he uses a complementary thought to express it another way. So these three phrases, they are saying the same thing. They are saying the same. They are saying the same thing, but in different ways. That's why he's saying from everlasting is equal, or is the same as from the beginning, or before the earth was. So this is the thing that we are seeing here. So John 1 verse 1 and Proverbs chapter 8 verse 22 to 23, it's saying the same thing. So in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. The same was, if we read verse 2, do you still remember that verse that we read? Verse 2, it said, the same was in the beginning with God. So I'm suggesting that this beginning, it is the beginning that has to do with the Word. It is the beginning that we are seeing here. It is the same, like saying from everlasting, or from beginning, or before the earth was. For John is using Hebrew parallelism. This is the thing that we are seeing here. So in other words, okay, let's go back to verse 1. The second part is saying that, and the Word was with God. So what we are seeing here is, if the Word was with God, then the Word cannot be the same being. He cannot be the God whom he was with. So which means we have the Word and we also have God. And according to this second part of the verse, he's saying the Word was with God, which means the Word was with something, was with God. So here what we are seeing here is Jesus and the Father. These are two separate and distinct individuals. Are we seeing this? If the Word was with God, so which means the Word cannot be the same being whom he was with. So Jesus and the Father, these are two separate and distinct individual beings. So according to this verse, the only being that was with God was the Word. Why am I saying the only being? It's because God is the only one begotten Son, the only begotten Son. The word only, it's removing any other, it's excluding any other being from from being the only begotten Son of God. It is only Christ. So that's why I'm saying the only being that was with the God, or that was with God, was the Word. So in other words, there were only two divine beings, or there were only two divine persons before creation of the universe. Before anything came into existence, there were only two divine beings. One was the Word and the other was God. It was Jesus and God. And now we know how Christ came into existence. It's because he was begotten of God from the beginning, from everlasting, from ever the earth was. This is the point. So from beginning is the same as to say from everlasting, as we have seen Solomon using. We said he was using what we call Hebrew parallelism. He's saying from everlasting is equivalent to say from the beginning. Are we getting the point? This is the thing that you are saying here. So it's also equivalent to say from ever, or ever the earth was, before the earth was. This is the thing. So in other words, from everlasting, it just means before anything was there, from the beginning. This is the thing that we are seeing here. So in other words, John chapter 1 verse 1 and the Proverbs chapter 8 is saying the same thing. So there's something that we need to talk about, especially on this part, on this second part. We know that it is important also to note that the word, there's a word that is missing on this verse in our King James Version. But if we go to the Greek text, it was there. So in other, it was left by the translators. But that word is foreign. It emphasizes the point that I'm going to make here. So if you have Bible concordance, or you can even download the Greek text of John chapter 1 verse 1, there's a word that is missing, which is tov. So in other words, that word tov, it means the. So the text was supposed to read, in the beginning was the word, and the word was with the God. Not the word was with God. There's a word, there's a missing word here in our King James Version in English, which is the God. The word was with the God, and the word was God. So you can do your researches if you do have Bible concordance, or if you have access to the internet, you can go and do your researches. So the phrase the God, it identifies the one true God, the Father. So in this way, so the way the is important. For say the God. So while Jesus was called God on the last part of the verse, so he said the word was God. While Jesus is called God in the last part of the verse, there is a clear distinction between him and the God whom he was with. So the God whom Jesus was with is the God the Father. This is the thing that we are saying. So the Father is God, and so his Son is God by nature, just as any human being, as any human inherit or possesses the very nature of his parents. So Christ also is God in the sense that he possesses the very nature of the God. He possesses the very nature of his Father, for he was begotten of God. So he is fully divine as the Father is divine. For it pleased the Father that in him should dwell all the fullness of the Godhead bodily. So the Son was not the Father, and yet the Son has his Father's divine nature by inheritance. So he is God because he is the Son of God. The same applies to me. I am human because I am a son of a human being. Are we getting the sense? So this is the verse is trying to tell us. So here what I'm going to do, I'm going to read I think 4 verses that say Christ proceeded forth, or he came out from God. The first verse is John chapter 8 verse 42. It says, Jesus said unto them, if God were your Father, you would love me, for I proceeded forth and came out from God. Neither came I of myself, but he that sent me. Now Christ is telling us clearly that he proceeded forth and came from God. Are we getting the point? So what happened first, it was he proceeded forth from God. He came out from God. This is how he was begotten. In other words, this is the same way to this is also the same way to express or to give that gives us the point that Christ was begotten. So if we read, okay, let's read another verse from John chapter 16 verse 27 to 28. It says, for the Father himself loveth you, because you have loved me, and they believed that I came out from God. I came out from God. Not just saying, he's not just saying I came from God. He's saying I came out from God. In verse 20 he says, I came forth from the Father, and I am come into the world. Are we getting the sense? So Christ coming into the world, this is the point that we are getting on verse 28. He says, and I am come into the world. But before he came into the world, he is saying that I came out from God. Before anything was ever made, before the universe was there, before all the angels and everything that was made, before all those things, Christ came out from God. And God gave us his only begotten Son. Are we getting the point? So this is the thing that we are seeing here. Another verse is John chapter 17, verse 7 to verse 8. Verse 7 is saying here, now they have known that all things whatsoever you have given me are of you. For I have, verse 8, for I have given unto them the words which thou givest me, and they have received them, and they have known surely that I came out. So Christ is praying to his Father. He's saying, these, the disciples, now they have known surely that I came out from you. and they have believed that thou did send me. Are we seeing the point here? He's saying now they believe that you are my source, you are my father, you are my literal father, and I'm a literal son. I came out from you. You did you have beget me. In other words, they say they have believed that, and they also believe, and they have believed that you did send me. So this is the thing that we are seeing here. So in other words, Christ was brought forth from the Father before the earth was created, or before the universe was created, before anything that was made, before all things. In other words, from the days of eternity, or from the beginning. That is the beginning we are referring to, the beginning of him being the Son of God, or when he was begotten of God. So this is what we are saying, or it is from everlasting. Are we getting in the days of eternity? So let's read again Proverbs chapter 8, verse 23. It emphasizes the same point. This is the fourth verse that proves that Christ came out from God. Verse 23 of Proverbs chapter 8. It says, I was set up from everlasting, from the beginning, or ever the earth was, when there were no depths. I was brought forth, when there were no fountains abiding with water. Before the mountains were settled, before the hills, I was brought forth. While as yet he had not made the earth, nor the fields, nor the highest part of the dust, nor the world. So in other words, this is the thing. This is what we are saying. Christ saying, I was brought forth. I was brought forth. In the New Testament, sometimes he says, I was begotten. So let's go back again to John chapter 1, verse 1. John chapter 1, verse 3. It says, all things were made by him, and without him was not anything made that was made. So the first part, okay, why was I emphasizing the point that Christ was begotten, or he was brought forth, or he came out from the Father, is because the word begotten, that's what it means, but the word created doesn't mean the same thing. So here what we are seeing is, we want to see when did creation begin, and was Christ a part of it. So let's go and read verse 3. It says, all things were made by him. By who? By Christ, by the word. All things were made by him, and without him was not anything made that was made. So this verse has two direct statements, being that Jesus pre-existing. Now this verse is saying, it also tells us that Christ pre-existed before creation. How we see this point. So, and also the other thing is, not only were all things made through him, but also that without him nothing was made. If you read Colossians chapter 1, verse 6, it says, for by him were all things created, all things, not some things. This is the same thing that we are seeing here on John chapter 1, verse 3. It says, all things were made by him. So all things came into existence by creation. Are we getting the point? And it was by him, it was by Christ. He is the one who created all things, and all things came into him by creation. So that's why, for by him all things were created, that are in heaven or that are in earth, visible and invisible, whether be the thrones or dominions or principalities or powers, all things were created by him and for him. So in other words, if Jesus created all things, then in other words, then he is not among the created thing. For all, if all things came into existence by creation, then Christ is not part of creatures. He was not created. For he is the creator. He's not a creature. Are we getting the point? So even if we read Colossians chapter 1, verse 7, and he is before all things. It says he is before all things, and by him all things consist. So Christ is before all things. Even if you read Colossians verse 15, it says he is the firstborn over all creation. So Christ was firstborn before anything was created. This is what Paul is trying to tell us on Colossians chapter 1, verse 15. He's saying Christ was firstborn. He was begotten before anything was created. He is not among created things. He is above all creation, not part of it. So the idea that Christ was created In other words, that idea denies his divinity. It goes against the scripture. The scripture does not teach us that Christ was created. It only tells us that Christ was there before creation. He is the one, he is the creator. He created all things. He is not among the created things. So if all things came into existence by creation, he is not among the created things. He is above creation. So he was begotten first, or he was born before creation, because all of creation was by God through his son Jesus Christ. This is the thing. So before we close, let's also read this verse. It's from Ephesians chapter 3 verse 9. It says, to make all men see what is the fellowship of the mystery, which from the beginning of the world had been hidden in God, who created all things by Jesus Christ. Are we getting the point here? So Jesus, so Jesus is revealed as the creator, and he existed before creating all things. So according to the Bible, Jesus was begotten, which literally means he was born before anything was created, and long before God sent him into the world, he was begotten. So there are certain verses that prove that Christ was begotten of God. One is John chapter 3, verse 16 to 17, even verse 18, or it also proves the same thing. John chapter 18, verse 37, Colossians chapter 1, verse 15, even 1 John chapter 4, verse 9. These verses, they tell us that Christ was begotten of God. So, in other words, Jesus was not created, but he was begotten. He is the begotten Son of God. Thank you.